Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be going over Kislev and a beginner build for Kislev, which is one of my favorite factions and has been one of my favorite factions basically since the launch of the game. But yeah, so this is the build as always, and let's just jump in and get to it. We'll just talk about it in a second. So I'm just trying to remember real quick what it is before I delete this. But okay. So first of all, I'm going to recommend that you start with an Ice Witch. Ice you can do has some good spells, but they're a little bit more tricky to get good value out of. So I'm going to recommend that you go with this combination, Blizzard, because again, it's sort of like Pit of Shades in the sense that like you cast this, you delete a unit, so it's a little easier to start with because you don't have to think so hard about how you're casting. Hailstorm is good for killing Cav. So if you have like a blob, if they blob on your witch, you can cast Hailstorm on it and it'll kill the Cav that's surrounding you. And then Gust of True Fight, I'll talk about that in a second. It's really because we're going to add a little Grom, so sometimes you want to outrange a cannon. So that's what Gust of True Flight is for. So I'm going to recommend that you bring her on the Frostworm. So the default, if you look at her, she's 3,600 HP. She's really easy to die. So that's why I'm recommending you on the Frostworm. Frostworm is a decent anti-large duelist. Not incredible stats, especially the melee defense is a little bit low. Um, but with the Frostbite and I think combined that's 73 or 72, something like that. That makes her a reasonable duelist and a reasonable health pool. So she's tanky, she can do damage. So that's why we're going to bring her. Also, we're going to take that off. Power recharge. Um, the basically we're gonna use the I might as well do this. We're gonna use the iron ice armor because it again decreases the melee attack, makes your lord a little bit less squishy, and decreases their speed, so it stacks nicely with the frostbite. Now, Guardian Call is something I'm also gonna increase or do. It's 100 gold for a snow leopard. What are they called? Snow leopard. Um, these things are okay. They can do reliable damage against um, large things. So I'm gonna recommend that you bring that because it's just 100 gold. So you can throw that down even if it only does 100 gold's worth of damage. It still pays for itself. So can be really good, especially for hunting down lords. I think this is where I can't remember if I put Arcane Conduit on it on her. But let's see. Let's put it on for now, and then I might come back and get rid of it. So the next thing that I'm going to do, so again, in this theme of keeping your lords alive, which is an important thing for beginners to figure out, I'm going to recommend that you bring a patriarch. We're going to put him on a horse so he can move around the battlefield more quickly, and put the healing item. So this impacts every unit in the radius. So very good heal. It's like 10%, something like that. Um, Maybe even more. So it's pretty good to just drop this down on your lord and then heal them up. Um, if they're getting low. There are also a number of other good ones here. So it's hard to choose sometimes which ones that you use. But for example, like this is good because it refreshes your units. Melee attack is good. But I'm actually going to recommend that you bring the Courage of Sacrifice. Again, in the idea of keeping things alive. And basically, what happens is this goes off if the unit in the radius has hit points less than 25%, and it gives them more leadership. So with Kislev, Buyer Blood procs, and then the Courage of Sacrifice would start after the Buyer Blood. It gives them extra melee defense and extra leadership. It just has them hold in for a little longer. And in those situations where you really need to heal your Lord, that's very useful. Um, Right. And so the for the front line, we're always going to bring a bunch of armored Kossars. The reason that we bring armored Kossars is because they have high armor and shields. So their melee output is okay. It's not terrible. It's not great. Um, it's not bad actually. But and they have shooting, so they have a little bit of pistol shooting that's pretty low AP. So they're just kind of like a good generalist unit to hold the line. So yeah, I mentioned Little Grom. Um, they're like your front line. I guess I should say that. Um, Little Grom is just a good artillery piece, especially against shooting at large things. It has a little bit of extra damage versus the large units. So it's reasonably good. It's tanky. It's hard to kill. So it's a good artillery piece. It's a little expensive, so you might not always get value. But if your opponent brings like a really big monster, this will be your best way to kill it. Um, then I'm going to recommend that you bring one horse archer. And so the horse archer is just like the usual thing that we have one thing to capture a point early, so we don't completely give that up to our opponents. Then I got to remember exactly how the spend worked. I want to say that I did something like this, and then maybe I did one of these and then took off Arcane Conduit. Yeah. Okay. So the spear units, it's nice to have one spear unit. They're reasonably good stats. They're definitely good at holding, and they're definitely good at killing armored things, large armored things. With reasonable leadership, this is again just like a good unit to have in the back line. They're very hard to get rid of and good stats. So we'll be bringing more of these just for capture weight for the most part. Now, in the secondary, I think I recommended let's just look at this arrangement of mobile units for a second. I'm just ordering them in terms of cost. So I'm calling the things in the wood mobile units because they have 70 speed, so they're actually very quick. And yeah, a little bit slower than the Cav, but not by much. So anyways, what are we doing here? The Kossovite dervishes, they've taken a lot of nerfs recently, so I'm not a big fan of this unit, but for the sake of beginners, I'm going to recommend that you bring it. It has the Buyer Blood passive, so it's good at diving. It's a good cheap unit to dive enemy archers. It's good for protecting your backfield and stopping enemy cav from getting on your archers. And then things in the woods are good for, they're the anti-infantry unit, monstrous infantry, so they do pretty good damage. They're not amazing. They're pretty squishy. And they've also gotten a lot of nerfs recently, but they're still very useful to clear out armored infantry. So you want these fighting with your troops, and basically, if you're facing a Khorne warrior, Khorne warriors will kill armored Kossars pretty effectively. So things in the woods are there to fight back. Then Griffin Legion. These are the strongest cav that Kislev can bring. What they have is the Glorious Charge, and Glorious Charge obviously doubles the duration, and it gives a leadership penalty. So they have a humongous charge bonus. Doubling the duration of that charge bonus basically puts you at 100 melee attack and like 110 weapon strength. So it's pretty incredible how much extra damage they'll give to the Griffin Legion. So yeah, Griffin Legion win most of their fights except against armor piercing cav. So armor piercing anti-large cav. So basically what you do with them is you can run them around the back and be rear charging your opponents, or they can be winning fights, cavalry fights. So yeah, let me just look real quick at what the rest of the army looked like. As soon as this loads. So right, okay, so actually I put 2 spears in the starting army and not an archer in this one. Then 2 spears there. And then, okay. So actually somehow, oh, right, because the spend works out. Yeah, so I brought actually two warriors just to defend a backfield. But I don't have any backfield units, you might say. You do have the little Grom, but so what are these guys actually protecting? Well, you can bring optionally the Akashina and a Kossar. So the Kossar is the basic bow unit. It's not the best in melee, but it does have some melee stats. Um, and it has reasonable stats as an archer. The Akashina ambushers, they have very high missile strength, so you can kind of shoot them at whatever, and if you get off your shots, it'll do really well. It's stalk, so you can get it into place, and importantly, it has this pack trap ability, which freezes your opponent and it adds vigor to them. It's not a huge freeze, but sometimes it's enough time to um, like, let's say if they're shooting from the back line, to get another cav in place to protect them. Um, yeah. Now, to round out the army, I was recommending that you bring a Zargard, um, a unit of Zargard, because they're really tanky troops. So it's just nice to have them in general. And then I think one more, maybe recommend more spears. Yeah, I think I recommend two more spears. So, okay. So just talking about the end, just talking about the melee infantry here. So the Zargard are really good at holding the lines. They have really high melee defense. They have high armor. So you can imagine this sort of like it's very similar to like a Chaos Warrior, but maybe a little bit better stats. So Zargard are really good because they provide some more staying power, and then two more Kislevite warriors, mostly because they provide capture weight. So they're not really doing that much damage, but it's just the cheapest infantry with full capture weight. Ignoring some of the archers that Kislev can field. So they become very useful for just holding points, especially in the mid game to the late game. And then, so how you would play an army like this, you have your skirmisher go capture one of the 3 points. Then you'll be pushing up with your artillery and kind of keeping your artillery. Maybe you leave one spear on your artillery unit. Then the rest of your troops go up to fight. Ice Switch can duel any lords if she gets a good opportunity against a cheap lord. And then you're thinking about, do I summon the archers? It depends what my opponent has and what I feel is going to be good. Like, does he have a lot of squishy units that I need to bring the ambushers, the wolf hearts in? Are they bringing a lot of infantry? So maybe we're summoning things in the woods. Do they have a lot of cav? Then we can summon Griffin Legion, etc. So yes, this is like a very generalist army that Kislev can bring to play against a lot of different factions, and I think you would see a lot of success with this approach. So then I just wanted to much more quickly go over. Let's see. So I wanted to just quickly also show the no DLC. I'm not going to talk about it as much. I'm going to try to keep the video length down. So if I talk about it too long, it's going to be a lot longer of a video. So I'm just going to kind of go through this quickly. So I'm actually going to recommend that you bring Kistalton on his bear. Kistalton is basically you bring them on the no DLC one because he's tanky. He's tanky because he has the heal and the courage of sacrifice. So basically, he can heal himself. Oh, I brought the wrong one. Salak's Lullaby. So he can heal himself with the heal. When he gets low, he gets a really big heal. He starts healing 0.4 per second, and also he has this leadership item. So it's really hard to kill. Then again, I was talking about how these things are so squishy, the frost maidens. I'm gonna actually recommend you bring the same spell kit. Um, Now this time on a war horse. Again, she's squishy, so she can die if you um, she can die if she gets caught. So we want to avoid that. Actually, maybe I'll take off. I'll come back to that. Um, the spend is a little wrong. Okay, I'll fix it. I'll fix it later. Um, so again, a front line. This time a little bit smaller of a front line. And maybe I'll add another one to fix the spend. But now I'm actually going to recommend you bring a Streltsy. So I didn't bring a Streltsy in the last one, partly because the uh, anti-large was a little bit more covered through the ambushers. But the Streltsy are pretty good at they're pretty good at shooting, and especially like large monsters, they can do a lot of damage. I already brought that. And similarly, we're going to bring a horse archer for the same purpose and a little Grom for the same purpose. And now to just protect the back line, I'm going to recommend that you bring a Zargard. Okay, so basically the same idea. These two units. Oh, the anti-large stuff because we don't have the spears anymore. So, anyways, Zargard will protect these two. These three will be the front line, and then we have the cannon. Now, in the secondary, I recommend you bring one more of these just to fill out, and also gonna recommend you bring a Zargard Great Weapon because the Zargard Great Weapons are pretty good at clearing out infantry, so it's nice to have a little bit of killing power. Now, I'm also going to recommend that you bring an Ice Guard Glaive. This unit has very high melee stats relatively for an archer unit, so you're not as worried about it getting dove by a cavalry unit because it'll just protect itself. So most games it'll get its shooting off unless it gets attacked by furies or something like that. But yeah, so they're pretty good just generalist unit, especially if you want more shooting. This is kind of like the replacement for the ambusher unit. Now I'm going to change the cav arrangement. Oh, actually, let's just add one more archer, so a little bit heavier in the shooting. Maybe you can sub out the Kossar, but we actually need some cheap capture weight, so that's really what it's doing here. It's just providing extra capture weight. And then for the mobility core, I'm going to recommend that you bring this. So subbing out the Griffin Legion, which is why I've added in the Zargard, because the Zargard will have to do some of the damage for missing the things in the woods in the Griffin Legion. But the Winged Lancers, not as good as the Griffin Legion. Now we're mostly looking at like if it's getting rear charges on enemy infantry, it's doing well. Or winning some of the easier cav fights, it still has glorious charge. But for our anti-large option, now we're really heavily relying on the Oath Brothers of Tor. Oath Brothers of Tor have this really good bombardment that adds blinded for 10 seconds. So you charge this thing into melee, probably with Kislev healing it, and you drop the bombardment. It doesn't do that much damage, but it adds the blinded trait, so you'll be like massively winning in stats for 10 seconds. So that's the most important part about the Oath Brothers of Tor. And then to finish out the army, I'm gonna recommend you bring a little Snow Leopard. Again, not the best unit, but if you need to chase around something large, it can serve that purpose. It's very fast and it has frostbite. So yeah. So this is the army that I suggest for the no DLC. I probably won't do so many of these no DLC videos, but I think Kislev is like an easier faction to pull this off for, as well as Lizardmen, which was who I did last. Um, if the Oath Brothers of Tor, I can't remember, maybe this is a DLC unit. I can't remember. Then you can just drop it for a War Bear, and maybe with the extra funds, turn the Kossar into another armored Kossar. So something like this. Da-da-da. And then this, and then you would either bring one of these two. Armor Kossars with great weapons aren't the best. Sometimes they have some uses. Maybe here is a good one. Anyways, this is the no DLC army. You can bring this if you're interested. As always, make sure that you save the build. My favorite banner is probably I've done this one a lot, the Urson Revivalists. Sometimes I like the red color scheme with the Druzina. But today I'm gonna go with Daughters of the Forest because I think that's cool. Okay, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. I think Dark Elves is next in the cards, but I'm running out of ideas of which factions to cover next, so definitely let me know what you want to see. All right, see you later, and bye.